If you can take a seat, please, so we can get started. Good morning, students and esteemed guests. My name is Cindie Neilson, and I have the privilege of being the head of school here. I'm excited to welcome you to our school. Today is a joyous day to celebrate all of the hard work that has been put into place to bring this moment in our school history forward. I want to thank our staff and larger community for their work to support the renaming process. All of you were so dedicated in the efforts to get us here. I especially want to thank Karima Scott for all of her work guiding this process along, and Pamela King for her support in bringing the process to fruition. We are honored to have Melvin H. King and his legacy represent the school and serve as a beacon that guides our work, integrating high-quality instruction and specialized therapeutic supports. There are so many people, a widespread community, that are part of this proud moment. It is my pleasure to introduce one of them today. She's been a strong ally for BPS and a crucial advocate and voice for the Green New Deal and for our school. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Michelle Wu to the podium.
Good morning. Okay, I'm trying to fix this so that future speakers will have a little bit more amplification. Is that okay? Can everyone hear me like this? Okay, great. Good morning to all, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here and for making sure that the legacy, the life, the honor that the city of Boston has for having witnessed and been part of the transformation that Mel King envisioned, that is moving forward in a big way. We know that many, many hands have been part of making sure we could celebrate today's event, and I want to thank Cindie for your many years of service to our Boston Public Schools, for nearly 3 years of leadership here as head of McKinley Schools. So give a round of applause to our students. And I'm so grateful, as you'll hear shortly, to be on stage with these incredible leaders, our amazing superintendent, thank you, Super Skipper, Ms. King, Jalen, you are incredible, and I'm honored to sit here alongside you. Thank you to the King family for everything that you have shared with the city and for ensuring that the young people of our city will have a very tangible daily inspiration and a culture of ensuring that they feel and see the potential and possibility of Boston infused in each individual student every single day. I see many of the trailblazers who have been part of the Rainbow Coalition for many years and have opened doors for those of us who have the honor to serve today to walk through paths that have been blazed over many, many decades of relentless activism, love, and vision. And so to all those who are here, I see some longtime friends such as Jovita Fontanes, Dow family represented here, Frida, Byron, Mr. O'Brien, and all of our longtime leaders whose vision also made sure that this would be not just individual endeavor, but a collective one, as Mel laid forward. And especially thank you to those who serve in government. So thank you to City Council President Ed Flynn, City Councilor Erin Murphy, City Vice Chair Lecanto, and Chair Robinson from the school committee. We're so grateful for all that you do. Oh, sorry, I apologize, O'Neill. I apologize. And to our young people, some of whom have come away on a bus this morning, stuck in traffic, we're glad that you made it here. And to the school staff and faculty, staff members who pour their heart into teaching our young people, we're grateful for your service. It was about a year ago that we were standing just outside the doors here announcing that Boston would undertake a major endeavor to focus on delivering the buildings, the health, the inspiration to every single part of our city through a Green New Deal for Boston Public Schools. That this school would be one of the first batch to benefit from a commitment to ensuring that energy efficiency and healthy and inspiring spaces, the classrooms, the science labs, the coordination and co-working spaces were possible that each one of our young people deserved. Since then, we've rolled out the first of our electric school buses, launched efforts to improve energy efficiency and clean water access, and broke ground on a new building for the Carter School. And today we are excited to acknowledge the incredible work and legacy of Mel King, whose name will forever inspire the young people of this community. Mel's love for Boston stretches back decades and will stretch far forward into our city's future. The brunch table that Mel and Joyce opened up for so many years created a feeling of home for many in this neighborhood and many of every generation. The leaders who are currently serving in their roles today, many of us would count ourselves as those who benefited from Mel's guidance and from the warmth and love that were created at that brunch table. The renaming process came after a significant public conversation, just as Mel would have liked it. Over the past year, there were public meetings and surveys asking for input from everyone in the community. And what we heard over and over again was that our schools should be community spaces, hubs for students and families and neighbors that honor our community's legends. And so today, we are very excited to reaffirm that the William McKinley schools will become the Melvin H. King South End Academy. And while the names we choose to elevate matter, whose stories we tell, whose legacies inspire our young people, I want to be clear that this is just one part of our broader process to create school buildings and communities that reflect the talent and brilliance of our neighborhoods and meet the modern standards that our students, families, and staff deserve. Students and families at the McKinley, the former McKinley, have long felt the pain of deferred and deprioritized maintenance. The Mel King Academy will not extend that legacy. We will do better, and we will ensure that through visioning alongside community members, through the work and input of students, families, faculty, staff, and local partners, we'll drive a design process forward for updating and renovating the school to align with the community's goals and values. And we're looking forward to moving this renovation into the design phase in this coming year. To rename the school in Mel King's honor is one thing. We're very proud to do that. But to reshape it in his image, to infuse it truly with his commitment, love, and vision is another endeavor that goes on and will be an act of service every single day. We will do both because that's what Mel would have demanded. It's what our students and families deserve. And we are so proud and honored that the young people here will carry that legacy on. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge Councilor Mejia is here as well. Our next speaker is someone you all know. We are so lucky to have an amazing champion leading our district. Please join me in welcoming Superintendent Skipper to the podium.
Good morning. I want to start by thanking Mayor Wu really for just being such a champion of our youth, champion for our schools, and it lives out every single day as she attends events and makes the commitments to really walk the walk. So I just want to thank Mayor Wu for that. I also want to recognize Chair Robinson and Vice Chair O'Neill and all of our electeds for being part of the support for our VPS and for being here on this special day. Most importantly, I want to thank our school leader, Neilson, as well as all of the staff and the students that are here. I've had the chance to be in the classrooms and to see the work that happens here at the new Melvin H. King South End Academy. And there's a tangible love that the staff has here for our students. And I have seen such amazing, smart, articulate work that the kids here are doing. That needs to be celebrated and recognized. I also want to thank Mrs. King and the King family for sharing Mel with our city and with our schools. I had the chance, back in 1997, I was a young teacher at the time, but I had a chance to meet Mel and to work when the Fab Lab was happening at the South End Tech Center. And I can say that I can count on like one hand the people I've met that leave a lasting impression, and Mel was one of them. And it was because his love for kids and youth, his commitment to the community and advocacy, and most importantly, his demand for equity in education were a part of who he was. There was no question when you met him, that's what you left with, as well as someone who was brilliant and humble and dedicated. And so I took that with me as I taught, I took it with me as I served in the city, and I still do, as a model that if I can do a tiny bit of what Mel did for our district, for the South End, for our city, I will consider myself successful in my career. For the students and the staff, and for our leader, I also want to celebrate, when I got up this morning, you get to go to a lot of different events, but every so often you wake up and you're like, this is a special one. That's how I woke up this morning. This is a special one. We will do this once, and we will do it right, and we will make sure that the Melvin H. King South End Academy has what it needs in resources, in staffing, in support to do right by the students that are here. And so today, not only is this a celebration of Mel's life and his work in this school, but it's a commitment. It's a commitment from the city, as you heard the mayor, and it's a commitment from our district to get this right. So congratulations to our students, to our staff, to our leaders, and most importantly, to the King family. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent, for your words. I also want to recognize Councilors Lujan and Miranda have also arrived as well. Thank you for joining us. Next, I'd like to introduce, and it's my honor to introduce, Mrs. Joyce King, the wife of Melvin H. King. To share remarks on behalf of the family.
Thank you. Good morning. It's quite a group. Thank you. This is a special time, and I just want to go back a little bit in the beginning of history. Melvin and I grew up in what is called the New York streets, and some of you may know some of the history of the early part of what we have now on Warren. And the New York streets were considered, when I was there, that they tore them down. They came with bulldozers, and everybody had to leave the South End. Everybody who had lived there for years and years, like me, like Melvin, we all had to leave the South End because the city had decided they were going to do something else with that area. And so I remember all of that being thrown out in terms of what they did to that neighborhood physically. Melvin did not want to leave the South End. Almost everybody we knew left the South End and moved someplace else in the city of Boston or outside of the city. Melvin did not want to leave the South End, so we didn't. So we lived in a basement apartment, and then another time we lived on 4 flights up in an apartment building. All of this in not too far from where we are now. I could walk. The South End house owned some of that property in the early days. And then we lived in the top floor of an apartment building on Tremont Street, and Melvin was still working for United South End Settlements. We moved to different buildings that USCS owned, and finally, what was, I have to say here, is that he persisted in staying in the neighborhood that he wanted to live in. And he went to bank after bank after bank to get a loan to buy a piece of property. And it didn't happen right away. It took many years before we finally did it again. But he was going to stay, and so we stayed. We raised our children. We lived a fun life often. But I just wanted to try to say to you how persistent Melvin King was about what he decided, what he thought was something that needed to happen. The banks should have given him a loan. He had a job. And he had proof that he was an upstanding citizen, so to speak. But we couldn't do any of that for years and years and years. So one of the things that happened is that he was working for United South End Settlements. And so when we moved to the Rutland Street Center and lived on the top floor, and we had children. So we spent a lot of time with United South End Settlements, and Melvin did all the things that any of you have talked about. He was a sports lover, so every person that came by who was a young person was asked, would you like to play ball or do this or do that? And he opened, we lived at 48 Rutland for many years on the top floor. Frida will know a little bit. And they had dances for the youth. And one of the things that happened is that in the early days, when he was the director of 48 Rutland, a group of black teenagers would have a dance, and then the next week it would be a group of white young people who would have a dance. And they were all part of the neighborhood. And finally they were asked by Melvin, why do you have a separate, why can't you just mix it up? And both groups said at their separate times, we don't think we can dance like them. So I never forgot that one. So he said, well, let's give it a try. So they did. So when the notices went out that there was going to be a dance on a Friday night, run by somebody's group, and that all were welcome. So they encouraged people to come that weren't usually coming to those dances by that particular group. And so that was one of the ways that he made sure that people got to know one another, and the young people in particular, and that they realized that they could learn from one another, and that they did know how to dance each other's steps, whatever that was. And I remember that because I used to be drawn in as a chaperone from time to time, because we lived on the top floor of the building, so I couldn't escape. But as time went on, we wanted to make some changes in our own life and buy a piece of property. The banks would not, had all kinds of excuses about why they couldn't give us a loan to take a mortgage and buy and to go house hunting. And we were going to stay in the South End, of course. So he persisted, and he went to every single bank in the city, and he went again a separate time. Sometimes he would drive, and I would sit in the car. I didn't want to listen to the arguments. And finally, we got the house that we have now, 4 Yarmouth Street. But in between, we rented in various parts of the South End, raised some of our children. And so I just want you to think about the word persistence, because that was an important part of Melvin King. And as some of you know, or Byron Rushing knows, I always call him Melvin. His family called him Melvin. Everybody else calls him Mel. So if you hear me say Melvin, you know who I'm talking about. And so it was the persistence that Melvin has, that this was a good thing to have, and why couldn't we have it too? So that was why he went to every single bank in the city more than once. So I would say that persistence was a part of his DNA, if you will. That if he thought it was a good thing to go after, he would figure it out and try to make it happen, whether it be for him personally or for other people, and particularly the people who came to 48 Rutland Street in particular. So when I go back a little bit, the New York streets was where we grew up. And I'm laughing because I don't think anybody knows New York streets except me. I'm 92 years old. So I remember when. And so the South End meant a great deal to Melvin, and it formed how he came to be as as the days went by and the years went by. We lived in a neighborhood where everybody was there from around the world. So we knew people who came from other parts of the world, from other parts of the United States, and they were white, they were Asian, they were Latina, they were African American. And while we didn't get along perfectly, we learned about one another in ways that I think have lasted for many people. So we went to the weddings, we went to the baptisms of people on our street and in our neighborhood. We went to church programs, depending on where that person was. So we were also led by our parents to be respectful. And respect was a big word in our family, in our families, that we had to be respectful of others and respectful of yourself. So that made it easy, I think, for Melvin and for me to just meet people and talk to people and be a part of the community. So when they decided to tear down, we lived in the New York streets, I don't know if you know about that. The city decided to tear down the New York streets, and everybody had to move. And I have a request for Mayor Wu. In the process of tearing it down, I'll get back to that, of tearing it down, everybody left wherever they could go. But there was discrimination in housing in the city of Boston. So black people couldn't go just anywhere. And so that was a little bit harder for us to go. So we did learn that over time. But we didn't want to leave the South End, or Melvin didn't anyway. And so we tried renting, we went here, we went there. And I remember walking down my street after it had been demolished. You could walk down, there was cement on upended sidewalks and streets, and you had to be careful, walking to find out that they really did tear down and demolish our neighborhood. The important thing is that Melvin did not want to live in any other community except the South End. So we had to figure out where we're going to live. So the United South End Settlements helped a great deal with that, because he was working there, and so there also was 48 Rutland Street, and we lived on the top floor. We moved into the top floor. What? I can't hear you.
Said that already?
I said that already? I have a son. He's the youngest one. He's sitting beside me pizza. He's a good kid most of the time. But the thing, let me make it shorter then. The thing is that Melvin was persistent. He wanted to have his own home. And he went to every single bank, and they said no. And he went back more than once. And finally, he was able to get a loan, and we ended up buying Yarmouth Street. But up until then, we rented and lived at different places. But it was his wanting to stay in the South End that motivated him. And in fact, when we were out and about at other events, we would see some former South Enders, and they would say, "Where did you go?" And he would say, "We're still there." And they couldn't figure it out. But Melvin is stubborn. And so we have never lived in any other community except the South End of Boston. So, and so this is and because he believed so much in education, all kinds of education, that this particular program, this particular time, is special to me, because people come together. They come together with all of our differences that are in this room, as I can see, and all of the different things we bring to whatever we do, which makes this an important part of Melvin's life. He really believed that we could all live and work and learn and play together. But anyway, I want to thank you. And I have two people up front who are giving me signs that I'm talking too long. One is a friend and one is a child.
I am curious though, Ms. King, what was the request that you had for me? I think we're all curious, right?
Oh, yes, okay. The South End that I grew up in, was called the New York Streets, all the neighborhoods. So what I wanted to ask the mayor is, why did the city of Boston allow, I don't know who, the streets in the old South End, that's no longer, to be named after cities and towns in New York State? Good question. So you can get somebody to do some research. I've often wondered about that. But the bottom line is, Melvin, when he decided, that there was something that could be done, he never thought anything couldn't be done. And he would work with anybody, or alone or with anybody, to try to get it to happen. And that's why we have stayed in the South End for so long. So we don't know how else to live except in the South End. But I want to thank you. And it's so nice to see so many people. I don't usually do this.
I think it's an important point. These days we would much rather name our streets after some of our basketball players who have dunked on the New York ones and others. But I think at the services and the celebration of life for Mel, I learned, someone mentioned there that it was, and maybe Byron would know better than anyone at all, that it was related to Boston being a distribution or shipping hub through the railroads, and that those were some of the cities that we were receiving and sending goods to. But doesn't justify celebrating New York. I just wanted to note that sorry, Byron.
It's just the survival name is Albany.
That's right. The last remaining one is Albany Street. I wanted to thank and recognize, I'm sorry, all of our elected officials are sitting in different places, and so we keep seeing some of them and not all of them. I see Councilor Fernandez Anderson here. Thank you so much for your leadership. And I see Senator Nick Collins as well. I just wanted to note that, and Senator Miranda, although we had promoted you to counselor, but Senator Miranda. I wanted to note that before this ceremony began, I had asked Ms. King what would be the most important way to ensure that this incredible school does carry on the legacy of Mr. King. And she had said to make sure that each individual student is seen and celebrated, has what they need, because we so often think about the collective. And so as we talk about classes and schools as a whole, that is, I think, the challenge through Ms. King, from Mel, to all of us, whether it's young people, as you're looking around a group, who's the person who needs a little bit extra love that day? Who is the person who you could bring in a little closer? So I will certainly take that reminder and charge to heart today.
We want to thank Mrs. King again for joining us today. It's such an honor. Thank you. And now we will have our very own Jalen Rodriguez read a poem entitled Struggle, written by Mel King.
Good morning, now students and staff of the the Melvin Age Kids South End Academy. I just want to say, guys, before I start this poem off, it is amazing to be a part of the staff and the students, to be a part of this community, to be a part of this family that we got going on here. If it wasn't for the love of Melvin King, I don't know where this would even carry on, you know what I'm saying? But now I have to you a poem written by the beloved Melvin King, Struggle. It's a struggle developing solidarity. It's a struggle being positive. It's a struggle making common unity. It's a struggle living. It's a struggle because it's slow. But if we struggle at developing solidarity, being positive, shaping reality, and making common unity, we will all grow. Because to struggle is to work for change. Oops. And change is the focus of education. And education is the basis of knowledge. And knowledge is the basis for growth. And growth is the basis for being positive. And being positive is the basis for building solidarity. Building solidarity is a way to shape reality. And shaping reality is loving. And loving is living. So struggle. Brought to you by McKinley.
Thank you again, Jalen. And now the moment you've been waiting for. Our art teacher, Ari Halpin, put together a banner that we will now unveil. I asked the students, and they're up here, to come up and unveil the banner. Why don't you go? Oh. Hi. How you doing? You be down there. You not down there? No. It's not down there? Yeah. Yeah. It'll be easier. Yeah, more room. Yeah, nice job. But it's going to be a couple. So, I didn't know that. Thank you so much for being part of this special day. I want to thank Mayor Wu, Superintendent Skipper, and Mrs. King again for joining us to celebrate this wonderful, wonderful moment. For the media, you can please come down for a quick side avail. On everyone's way out, please stop and get a t-shirt so you can share this day with us to commemorate it. So please make sure you get one if you don't already have one. Thank you so much.